Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Jaya Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Gopi Yashodanandana Prajajamandana Yashodanandana Prajajamandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Yamunatira Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We're continuing our reading in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, Text 37. Tata Prichami Samsidhim
Tata Prichami Samsidhim
Yoginam Paramam Guru
Yoginam Paramam Guru
Purushasye Yatkaryam
Purushasya Karyam
Vriyamanasya Sarvata
Priyamanasya Sarvata
Taprichami Samsidhi
Tata Prichami Samsidhim
Yoginam Paramam Guru
Yoginam Paramam Guru
Purushasya Yatkaryam
Purushasya Karyam
Vriyamanasya Sarvata
Priyamanasya Sarvata
Taprichami Samsidhi
Tata Prichami Samsidhim
Yoginam Paramam Guru
Yoginam Paramam Guru
Purushasya Yatkaryam
Purushasya Yatkaryam
Vriyamanasya Sarvata
Priyamanasya Sarvata
Ata Prichami Samsidhim
Tata Prichami Samsidhim
Yoginam Paramam Gurum
Yoginam Paramam Guru
Purushasya Yatkaryam
Purushasya Yatkaryam
Vriyamanasya sarvata.
Vriyamanasya sarvata. Atha pachami samsidim.
Atha pachami samsidim.
Yoginam paramam guru.
Yoginam paramam guru.
Purusasya yatkaryam.
Purushasya yatkaryam.
Vriyamanasya sarvata.
Vriyamanasya sarvata. Atha, therefore, Prichami, beg to inquire, Samsiddhim, the way of perfection, Yoginam, of the saints, Paramam, the supreme, Guru, the spiritual master, Purushasya, of a person, Iha, in this life, Yat, whatever, Karyam, duty, Vriyamanasya, of one who is going to die, Sarvata, in every way. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. You are the spiritual master of great saints and devotees. I am therefore begging you to show the way of perfection for all persons, and especially for one who is about to die. Purport. Unless one is perfectly anxious to inquire about the way of perfection, there is no necessity of approaching a spiritual master. A spiritual master is not a kind of decoration for a householder. Generally, a fashionable materialist engages a so-called spiritual master without any profits. The pseudo-spiritual master flatters the so-called disciple, and thereby both the master and his ward go to hell without a doubt. Maharaj Parikshit is the right type of disciple because he puts forward questions vital to the interest of all men, particularly for the dying men. The question put forward by Maharaj Parikshit is the basic principle, the complete thesis of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now let us see how intelligently the great master replies. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshurvidhanena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manodishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Nidati Swapadhyam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sahajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidam Sajivam Sarvaitam Sarutam Haritana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lamita Shri Vishakam Vidyasya Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanandara Kanta Nustute Tata Kanta Gaurangi Radhe Vrinda Vishwani Krishna Panu Sute Devi Pranamami Devi Manchanakalpatribhyasya Kripasindhuvedevcha Patikanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Vishesha Shri Shantascha Shri Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Shrimata Gadadhara Srimati Gauravarpunya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for inviting me to speak. Also online, Rahul. Hare Krishna. So this is very exciting because there's only a few verses left in the first canto, and we're hearing here the series of questions that Maharaj Parikshit is asking Srila Goswami that will basically form the basis for the entire rest of the Bhagavatam. Of course, other subsidiary questions will be asked, but everything will be based on in relation to these questions, this one and in the next verse. You'll see tomorrow. And so it is said that there, yes, in colloquial English, it is said that there are two things in life that are for sure. And does anybody know what those two things are?
Death and taxes.
Yeah.
Taxes.
Yeah. So, and even if one somehow evades taxes by criminal ways, or is just homeless, or maybe becomes a brahmachari, um,
Of criminal Prabhu is not paying any taxes.
yeah, there you go. There actually is a tax that everyone has to pay at the moment of death, and that is they have to everything, all of their greatest attachments are taken from them. So that is the final tax that everyone pays. Um, so it's true what they say. It's a great aphorism. And this question here that Maharaj Parikshit asks is it's the epitome of human intelligence. Um, you see that in animal life, the living entity is limited by its bodily circumstance, and its intelligence is only able to go so far as to, you could say, Paramatma only gives the jiva in an animal body enough intelligence to get food, to mate, survival and reproduction, basically, that's all. But in human life, um, we offered more facility for that. Krishna as Paramatma is giving us more facility. So this question is the most intelligent question that one can actually ask. Just because um, Maharaj Parikshit is asking, what is the goal of life, basically? You know, and he's asking the qualified teacher who actually knows the goal of life to please share that for the benefit of all humanity, especially for one who's about to die. This is important. And our position in this world is very much uh, in it's very we can relate with Maharaj Parikshit if we use that God-given intelligence because everyone is actually at the point of death. Um, it may happen in 7 days for us, Maharaj Parikshit, or it may happen in 7 years or 70 years. Nobody knows. Just like great Vaishnava poets, they say, Kamala Dala Jala Jivana Talumala. This life is so fragile, tottering just like a little drop of water on a lotus leaf. Even the smallest uh, wind it'll just come right off and be destroyed. But that's how fragile human life is. Death comes so easily. Um, remember, there was one family friend, of my parents, who he just went out to eat at a restaurant and he got food poisoning from romaine lettuce. And he was like 30 years old or something, 30, 35. Food poisoning from lettuce, and then I forget how long it took, but around a week he was gone.
No,
Yeah,
I became that.
yeah, from E. coli. It was just like really bad. Yeah,
Very hard. Lettuce today. No, I haven't.
yeah. It was just improperly washed or something. So you can see if somebody in you know the age of 30 is like in the prime of life, still quite youthful, very strong, good looking. Um, it was all everything was dashed before his eyes. Everything was gone, taken from him. And so we shouldn't take it for granted that, this is just something that happens to other people. It won't happen to us. And if it does, it won't be for a very, very long time, so we don't have to worry about it now. But but we should always remember our temporary position in this world. That's how it's like. So knowing that, we should develop a great urgency for spiritual life. And that is what Maharaj Pariksit, of course, he was very much wanting to know. I mean, he gave up everything else and surrendered himself to hearing, to asking questions, because he knew the goal of life. And so this word in the verse pritchami, which means beg to inquire, this begging um, from begging for mercy, begging from the spiritual master for knowledge. That is the proper mood that one should take. And also Arjuna, you see, he exemplified this famous verse, Karpanya dosho bhata svabhava pritchami. He says that word. Pritchami swadharma samodhacheta. Yajtraya shanmishitam bruhitam me shishyastaham shari bandham prapanam. That up until that point, Arjuna thought he had everything figured out, and he was, by his own intelligence and knowledge, he was explaining himself and offering different excuses as to why he shouldn't engage in his duty, because he was very much perplexed by his material circumstance, that he had to engage in warfare with those who near and dear to him, and it seemed like there was no way out. So he was very much in this verse. He expresses how he is. Um, he's feeling great anxiety. He's feeling miserly weakness, and he doesn't know actually what's best for him. And if we are intelligent, we will also take that mood that, in life, happiness comes and we like that, but then sadness comes and we want to know, why does that come? Why does suffering happen to good people, to bad people? Why is life so confusing and unpredictable? You know, and ultimately, why do I have to get old, to get diseased, and die, and then just do it all over again? And so you'll notice that until that point in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he basically didn't say anything to Arjuna. He didn't instruct him because Arjuna wasn't in the proper state of mind to receive instructions, still depending on his own intelligence. But in that verse, Arjuna says that he offers himself to Krishna as a disciple, and he asks him, please tell me what is best for me. He begs Gachami, and 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 so we can learn from these great personalities, Arjuna and Maharaj Parikshit, who practically they had the highest material position as great kings, and yet still they were humbling themselves before those who were superior in spiritual knowledge. And so this is the proper mood to inquire from an authority, because ultimately we don't inquire from somebody who knows the goal of life, then we will come up with all of our own explanations about what we should do or not should we should not do. And ultimately we put trust in our own mind. And that's a very dangerous thing because um, nobody can say that they're free from mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes here and there, you know. Even and nobody is perfect, you know. And if you choose to take dictation from your mind and senses, then you know from previous experience that you only meet with confusion, with suffering and defeats, and you won't get anywhere notable in life. And and Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita how um, how one must approach the qualified spiritual master. Tadvidi pranipatena paribhashyena seveya virakshit jnanam jnanina sattvadarshino. Because spiritual master is one who has actually seen the truth. Human beings, they have four defects, that their senses are imperfect, and so they're trying to gather knowledge with their senses, which can't even understand even things that you can see. Like, for example, you can see your hand, you can even cut it open and see everything that's working, but you still don't understand like how it's working, even though you're using your senses. So similarly, how can one understand metaphysical subject matter, like what lies beyond this material sky? You can't even see that. How do you expect to understand? And also, many people think they have it figured out, that after death, many people, they just think like, that's it. Like, you only live once, and then after death, like, I don't know what happens, but that's it. That's all people say when we ask them, like students and everything. And so they have no information about that. And then when they become convinced of that, they will tell that to others as the supreme goal of life. And then those people will also become cheated of the, of the goal of human life and everything like that. And so how do we get beyond these is we have to take information from the perfect authority. And that is the Shastras, which are they're the words of someone who is free from the material defects, someone who's not a conditioned soul bewildered by its mind and senses. They're the words of the absolute truth of Krishna coming down in disciplic succession. And this disciplic succession of Guru Parampara is supposed to be like a perfect uh, window that you can look through um, and hear perfectly, see what's going on from the source, Krishna. Krishna originally spoke to Lord Brahma, and then like that, the knowledge came down. And in the qualification of the guru who's passing on this knowledge is that he doesn't change anything. Just like if a postman is delivering a $1 million check to somebody, if he takes that check out and cashes it for himself, then he loses his job because he's not qualified. His job is just to pass on the parcel. And similarly, the guru who does that, who simply just passes on what he's heard from his spiritual master, you can understand that perfect knowledge has been un um, undoctrinated and is remaining the same. And ultimately that's what we're receiving. Shukadeva Goswami is sharing that with Maharsh Parikshit. And we're also hearing that from our rulers, from Srila Prabhupada. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he in the course talks about what he talked about a lot, which is the false gurus and things like that. That many people they might accept a spiritual teacher just for popularity or because it's a popular thing to do. They might use that spiritual master as like some kind of decoration that kind of makes them seem more cultured or more spiritually minded amongst their peers and friendly. But that's not a spiritual master. That's like having a pet or having like a dog. People oftentimes get little puppies to attract the opposite sex.
Yes.
You know, or just like on campus, there's like people um, trying to have students like sign these propositions so they can like vote on it, and like they're like ballot workers. And then so some of them we've seen that they have like little dogs with them to get students to stop and like pet them and things like that. And yeah,
Or rabbits.
yeah, also rabbits. You could do that. Yeah.
We should get rabbits. Those are supposed to okay. Many people, especially Chinese.
Cool. Yeah, Chinese people like rabbits. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to try that. But yeah, one who accepts a guru for this reason is actually um, bewildered in doing it for their own material sense gratification. But actually, one should accept a guru to endeavor that so that we can endeavor to stop altogether the process of material sense gratification and and ultimately any teacher, any father, anyone who's accepting the position of authority over others, if they can't properly guide their dependents out of the material perplexities of life, explain the goal of life, explain the difference between spirit and matter, and absolute necessity of worshiping the Supreme Lord, then that person is actually committing violence on that particular jiva because because their suffering in this world, their conditioned life is being prolonged. They have to take more births, and many times these so-called people they will tell their disciples that they can engage in sense gratification, illicit sex, so many things, so many examples of different gurus, Indian gurus who say that. And just like there's this, do you guys know about this these Buddhist monks who are
Yeah,
like walking?
yeah.
Yeah, Srimad showed me a video of their leader who was like speaking to
Yeah.
a crowd of like people. Maybe you've also seen it. But he was saying that that as long as you don't see the animal being killed,
Yeah.
then you're allowed to eat it. And it's okay. You know, I mean, it's like absolutely ridiculous. And so he's telling people that. So he's saying, it's okay to do that. Srila Prabhupada says here that, you know, both the so-called spiritual master and so-called disciple, they they both go to hell without a doubt. So just like the blind leading the blind. And it's a very regrettable situation. Yeah. And even these Buddhists, they're like very popular on social media actually. People are like very into them and they really like what's going on. But their message to the world is like you have to control your mind, control your emotions. You know, they were saying things like that. It's like, that's where people are at. But Rupa Goswami says, Shruti Smriti Prana Adi Pancharatre Vidhin Vina Aikantiki Hare Bhakti Utpatayaya Kalpata. He says that um, any 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 instructions which are devoid of relationship with the Vedic literatures like the Pancharatras, the Puranas, everything like that, it's ultimately, if they're not expounding on devotional service, then they're a disturbance in society, just unnecessary noise, basically. Um, but but you see here that Srimad Bhagavatam from the very beginning, Dharma Prochita Kaitavotra, it says saying that all other lesser goals of life like dharma, artha, kama, moksha are being completely rejected by this religious scripture. That param satyam dhimahi, that this literature will only deal with the absolute truth, devotional service, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So from the very beginning, the goal is stated that that we don't have anything to do with um, these lesser goals of life, these mundane achievements. Many other um, so-called, scriptures, they have so many different concessions, offering people gradual elevation. You see that in the Vedas with the different Rajasic and Tamasic Puranas, and you see that in the Bible and Quran saying that, if you want to eat meats, then you have to kill the animal in a certain way and everything. Um, but this is not to be taken to the ultimate goal of life. Um, these are just for those who cannot actually, who can't immediately take up devotional service to the Supreme Lord Krishna. They're at a lower level of advancement spiritually, so that's all they can really do. Basically, it's similar to how the government makes its there's a lot of regulation towards like selling liquor. You have to like buy a liquor license and get certified and all that, and then you're able to sell alcohol. So the government makes it more difficult for these activities to go on, which are inherently not beneficial for society. So similarly, the scriptures are making it those types of scriptures, they make it more difficult for people who have propensity for sense enjoyment to engage in further sense enjoyment. Um, but of course, in Kali Yuga, the majority of the population, they have no regard at all for any rules and regulations in any scriptures. And and so their life is compared to being no more than the animal life, which, just like the hog, he has a certain body which his nose and mouth are always like right next to the ground, the hog, because that's the food that's required of him, food that's on the ground, untouchable things. And similarly, the human beings, we're also, our vision is on the lower things of this world. And um, and nobody knows the actual goal of life. So therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is like the light in Kali Yuga, giving us the reprieve, the um, it's the guiding light back to Godhead, to our spiritual position in companionship with Krishna. And I believe in second canto, it's referenced one poem of, I think, Rupa Goswami, um, the chakora bird, or there's one bird who only takes water from the clouds, right? Um, and this bird, yeah,
What's the difference?
and yeah, but this bird, even though there's so much water in lakes, ponds, and rivers, this bird won't drink from those places, because the bird knows that the water coming from the sky from rain it's pure, it's uncontaminated, and even that bird is willing to withstand the thunder and lightning that come along with the storm in order to drink that water. So similarly, um, we should not see the um, the petty things of this world as the ultimate goal of life, and we should instead look towards Krishna and the mercy which is flowing down from his devotees in Guru Parampara as the only source of our substance and the only thing which will actually satisfy us. Because the things of this world, like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that um, they are only all the beautiful things in this world, they're all just a spark of my splendor. So when you see the beautiful sunset, that's everybody loves the sunset. Nobody's really up for sunrise, but sunset everybody knows. I remember in middle school, high school, everybody would be posting on their Snapchat stories, like online, like picture of the sunset. Like everybody from high school, they would post the same picture of the same sunset because it's very very attractive, all the colors and everything. And that is, that's many people that they don't even consider like this is art that we see. There must be some artist who's creating that. And then how much more beautiful is the mind or that the person who is the artist behind all of that? Because it's not just the sunset, it's also beautiful nature, landscapes, and beautiful music, and people themselves are beautiful, and um, so many nice things in this world. Um, they're only one tiny little fragment of the glory of Krishna. Krishna's Bhagavan. He's full of all opulences, all beauty, all strength, all knowledge, all renunciation, all power. Everything is contained within Krishna. That is the definition of God. And and therefore to know this is is of great importance for the conditioned living being who has no experience of actually the personal form of Krishna. If you can gradually understand that the, the connection of the material energy and things of this world with their supreme source, one can gradually develop in God consciousness. And and so and so you see that here with um, this this question that Srila Goswami was given, and uh, Srila Prabhupada talks about how uh, he says here, now let us see how intelligently the great master replies. It's very kind of a very poetic sentence, um, because his reply is the rest of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is true intelligence. And in the same way that Shukra Goswami uh, navigated the material perplexities which the conditioned souls of Kali Yuga would be facing with his instructions. In the same way, Srila Prabhupada took those instructions and composed his purports, which are completely meant for the people of this age. It's amazing how many of the different examples, analogies, things that Srila Prabhupada used were relevant to even Americans, people all across the world. Although Srila Prabhupada himself, he had never left India. He was just living in India, and you know, and then he was living in Vrindavan when he was writing this. Vrindavan is so, especially during that time, it was so cut off from the rest of the world. How could Srila Prabhupada possibly know what was happening in New York, in Los Angeles? But but like we were talking about yesterday, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he was offering this verse Katanchana Smrite Yasmin Dushkram Sukaram Ladet Vismrite Viparitam Syat Shri Chaitanyam Namamitam, that by remembering Krishna, even things which are very difficult to do become easy. If one doesn't remember Lord Chaitanya, then even easy things become difficult. And um, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport how if one wants to write about Krishna, one has to have the direct blessings of Krishna, because then Krishna will guide him. And so Srila Prabhupada was always in such a prayerful mood, remembering the Lord, praying to Rupa Goswami for guidance and on how to make this message relevant to the people of the West. And so he even said himself that Krishna wrote these books, by it's being used as an instrument. And so in this verse, Maharaj Parikshit, he glorifies Srila Goswami as the spiritual master of great saints and devotees. And um, and Srila Prabhupada, we also glorify him in that way, that he's the Lord and Master of all the devotees. And and therefore he is the bona fide spiritual master. He's a he has great unimaginable compassion for all the conditioned living entities, and his life was a complete offering of selfless service to help, raise and save the conditioned living entities in this world from missing the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And and Srila Prabhupada, he showed the way of perfection, and especially for one who's about to die. It's said in the verse. And he didn't only do it through his books, but of course through his personal example, his behavior, and the way he lived. You know, just reading a book like Transcendental Diary it's like so important, because you just see how Srila Prabhupada acted in public and also in private, and you see that it's the complete same. And any person, regardless of who they may be, he was always just, you know, he was always the perfect example of Krishna consciousness in all activities, all circles of life. And he was preaching to anybody who would come, even interviewers. He would he would preach to them directly, and he'd always be preaching to his disciples. And even one time, I think it was like 5 a.m. He called all of his leading disciples at that particular temple he was visiting. He called all the senior devotees just to come, and then he just preached to them for 2 hours from 5 a.m. to 7 for some reason. I remember that. But he was always just teaching his disciples how to give oneself fully and completely in the service of the Lord. And Shukadeva Goswami also, he gave himself 7 days, 7 nights, only for the benefit of Maharaj Parikshit and the rest of the residents of Kalika. So I think I'll stop there. Rambling now. So if anyone has any questions or corrections, please offer them.
I really like the analogy of Chartika breakthrough that he doesn't settle for any other water. Even though there's so many reservoirs of water, he just looks for the first drop of rain because it's pure. It's the purest, uncontaminated water. So similarly, we should not settle for any lesser goals. Srimad Bhagavatam says this in beginning. There's no project that I go to. Good morning, sir. Thank you for bringing that point. And that's what Srimad Bhagavatam is. Parikshit Maharaj was asking Prabhu. That's the way of perfection for the people who are going to die. Thank you so much.
You mentioned that the liquor license is probably a prohibitive factor in restaurants serving out liquor, but actually I don't think it's very difficult to get. Most restaurants just have to put a notice on their uh, outside the restaurant that they're applying for the license, and then they put the license number and everything, and they have some checks and rules to follow, and then they get the license. Actually, the government incentivizes the restaurants to maybe sell meat because meat is subsidized. So beans and rice becomes more expensive than meat sells. So it kind of incentivized to sell meat than vegetables or beans, for example. So it's unfortunate that it's like that.
Yeah. I think it's opposite in Kali Yuga. Oh. Oh, yes.
I was thinking about Srimad, but you mentioned earlier problems, right? Sorry. Oh, Prabhupada, you mentioned that Srila Prabhupada, he was in Bhutan and he didn't know it. But still, impossible things became revealed to him. Yeah, that's also true, but it's also true that Prabhupada was quite sane and quite informed person. Obviously, through his education and work, and, activities in this world, like you could say in reading newspapers. So it's not necessarily that your devotee is unable to process, understand these things. So in one sense, Srila Prabhupada, I would agree that definitely he was transcendental person, but in other hand, he was just also a reasonable person. Just had common sense. And throughout his life, we can see that Prabhupada would very often give opinions on political matters, legal things, warfare, social issues. There's definitely Shukadev Goswami is extreme example of that. Basically, he didn't care at all about what's happening in the world. The only thing he could care is Srimad Bhagavatam, and basically his deliverance. So he was kind of extreme example of taking a transcendental person, but one can also be a totally transcendental person and still very capable and very kind of romantic person, like, for example, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was also first class transcendentalist, but he was quite able person, able to deal with all kinds of people. Even you can say in his Lokika,
mundane occupation. Prabhupada also says in the one purport in first canto, the devotee is not passionate and he is not stupid. Which means he's not in the lower modes in nature. So on account of that, the devotee can also intelligently make decisions about things in this world. And that also gives nice, he's setting a nice example for other people. This is Prabhupada's example and struggle to spread Krishna consciousness is it's very much inspiring for us, because his life has a lot to do with just human experience, in which we are totally immersed. So Prabhupada is definitely divine personality, but at the same time, he showed like through this world, act intelligently for the ultimate purpose.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else from online also?
Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the class. Um, I often hear from Bhakti Vikas Maharaj that Smaran Anitya Nityada, so that was something which you also mentioned, that we should have sense of urgency. The death can come any moment, the final exam. So I was going through some situation. I had enrolled in some online course. And it wasn't the most useful one, so I just dropped out from that course. But the death is something which is everybody has to face one moment or the other. It's not even known when it will be there. So I was kind of vacationing and enjoying my life. I did not study. I realized had I studied, at least I could have given those exams, but it's okay. I had some devotee association in Dham recently, so where I could feel devotees having the urgency kind of they are dedicating more time to spirituality directly. At least for some days, I could have that experience, and now for some time hearing like this. Otherwise, I could feel that room that I may have, I'm not that comfortable, to leave it and go to some places which may be more austere for me. So, yeah, I could also feel that if I lose something, even a small thing, I'm worried. I'm not so serious about my sadhana that much. And Parikshit Maharaj had to lose so much. He had to lose the entire kingdom, everything, and on a very short notice. But he was detached and very much focused on spirituality. He was not in a panic mode. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your reflection, for
Good question. I think I was reading that the purport where it mentions that pseudo spiritual masters and then the disciples go to hell. Um, like that example with that you gave the monk. I think he was quoting something called Theravada in Buddhism. Like if someone sincerely believes what they're doing is right, if they still go to hell, how does that work? Is there any like
well, if somebody um, steals from a bank because they want to help their starving family, if they think
still
they're
go to hell?
yeah, they still go to jail. So yeah, they still go to
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. One can't claim that I didn't know the law or I don't believe in the law, so then I'm above it. Yeah. Right, Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai. Sri Balaram Gopal Prabhu ki Jai. Thank you, Tim Prabhu, for joining. We miss you in the morning.